Hello there, welcome to Namident Academy. Today we are going to discuss about how to write a scientific paper, and our concentration will be on the structure of the scientific paper. Scientific paper structure that we are familiar with are those from our reading, during our literature reading. In our field, we might have noticed some structure, nature, or how our research papers are being organized in our various disciplines. There is a structure or scientific paper structure that is being termed as IMRAD, which stands for Introduction, Methodology, Research, Results, and Discussion. The format of this kind of structure consists of 7 elements, which include the title of the research paper, the abstract, the introduction, the methodology or method and material, the results, discussion, and conclusion. In some papers, results and discussion are combined together. In others, they are being separated. The title of any research paper is the most important part or the element of that paper. The title should be concise and very informative. It is the part of the article that are being retrieved when researcher is being searched, or to say it is the part that are mostly being retrieved from a literature research, and hence when writing or drafting your first scientific paper, you should make sure that your title is very, very close to the main element, the main idea, the main theme, the main question you are answering in your research paper. As much as possible, you should avoid the use of abbreviation and avoid shorthand, abbreviation or shorthand in the writing of the title of your research paper. Your research title or the title of your paper should be very short, as much as possible short, not very long. It is debatable the size of the title. Some researchers or some journals prefer a relatively short title, whilst in some journals or in some research area, the title don't have any of what we call like the size as to how long it should be. But for me, my advice is that your title should be relatively short as much as possible. The second element is the abstract. Abstract serves as the outline of your paper. It should be concise and informative. As much as possible, you should try in your research paper or in your abstract to answer the following question. Your first question you should try to answer in your abstract is, what is the problem domain or the system under investigation? You should state clearly that the problem you are trying to address in this your research paper. You should try as possible to explain it in the abstract. The second question is, what is the research question that is being asked in this research? Or what research questions were answered that results in this publication. You should state them. The third question you should consider is what are the methods and the results obtained during this research or what the paper is being reporting. And finally, what are the concrete or major conclusion of the research paper? So in short, the abstract should contain briefly the purpose of the paper, the major method used, the major findings, and the major conclusion. Mostly, abstract is a standalone part of the paper and it's been reported separately as a page. So you should be able to write an abstract that can stand alone without necessarily citing a work inside the abstract. But if it's essential for you to cite a work, you should state the author or the artist and the year or years inside. And finally, in your abstract, you should try as much as possible to avoid abbreviation or unstandardized abbreviations and uncommon terms. If you want to use uncommon abbreviations, you should explain them at the first time of usage in the abstract. The third element of a research paper is what we call the introduction. In the introduction, you try to describe the objectives of your work. You provide an adequate background of the work and avoid detailed literature survey or summary of results in your introduction. You should try as much as possible to describe the general problem domain or the system under consideration. Briefly describe it and then concentrate much on the specific research questions that is being addressed in this research paper or the hypothesis being tested in this research paper. So in general, what most researchers or artists do in writing introduction is to divide the introduction into three different parts. In the first, they describe or explain the problem domain. And then in the second, they look at, for published literature, the gap in the previous literature, in the previous published literature, the gap there that has not solved their main problem. And then in the third part, they try to address the specific research questions or to explain the hypothesis they are trying to test within their paper, giving a support from previous published works. The fourth element of a research paper is method and materials. In the method and materials section, try as much as possible to give a detailed or appropriate method you took in doing your research, such a way that any other researcher or any person in your field can follow your steps to perform a similar research. You should not try to hide anything because the purpose of publication is to share knowledge and to share information with your colleague. And therefore, if your work is very important and you have got a very good result, some researchers might like to test those results and even improve upon it to make a breakthrough. So as a researcher and author, you should not hide any information in the methodology that you think is a very important to the attainment of the results you have. If the method you used in your research is not a new method, is already published method, you should try to summarize what you did and then give references. Again, if your method that you use is already published, please try as much as possible not to quote directly from the work, previous published work, but rather paraphrase it according to your own style of writing. And after that, give references. This will help your paper to be uniquely different from other paper. If it's very essential that you need to quote the method, do so by putting quotation mark in where you quote that method. And at the end, give references. Should in case that you use a previous published method, but then you have modified some part of the method, it is in your advantage to clearly explain in detail clearly explain your modification in your paper. So if, for example, there is already a method that has been used, you used a similar method, but in one place or another, you did some modification. What I will do is this: I will paraphrase the steps that is already published, and when it reaches place that to obtain the results I'm publishing, I will give much stress in that area. So that will give my paper an original value, where in future many people can refer to my work for this modification. The fifth element of a research paper is results. In the results section, describe clearly all the results you have obtained in the experiment. Take good advantage of figures and tables. And every figure you are going to use, try as much as possible to tell a story in a figure. Do not make it complicated. No matter how complex your work is, try as much as possible to explain the results in a simple language as possible, and also try to include the jargons used in that field. Don't make it plain. Try to make your results clearly and concise. And then your results should tell a story. For example, you should arrange it such a way that it will help your reader to understand the progress in that field or the progress of your experiment. If, for example, you have done experiment that deal with, let me say, time lapse, you have 3 or 4 different time, you should start explaining your results from the initial stages, then go stepwise up to the end. This will help all your readers to clearly understand your results. The sixth element of a research paper is discussions. In the discussion, you should try as much as possible to explain the meaning of the results you obtain. What are the scientific meaning of the results? It should be well explained. And also, what are the significance of the results? You should be able to explain it clearly in the discussion section. So, in doing the research, you have stated the research questions, and now you have found the results. So in the discussion, try to relate them with the questions you ask. How are they related to the questions that you ask? Have they answered the research question positively, or no, they have answered the research question negatively? So you have to explain that in your discussion. From the work of many people that I have read, and people or researchers try to hide the limitation of their works, and that they want to make their work as perfectly as possible. So in sometime in my review work, I try to ask the writers, the artists, what is the limit of their work? Because you can't write a paper with a limit border. For example, you have done a laboratory work and you have get a good finding. And in your discussion, you are claiming a general aspect of your work that even in the field, somebody can get similar results. In that, you are not being fair. You should have said within the limit, you have to state the limit of your work. So that if somebody wants to test your work, he can also know that this work, you can obtain these results in the laboratory settings. Maybe in the field, I might get different. So it is for your advantage to reduce the timing for reviewing and other stuff and your revision to state the limit. And also describe or give information on a future work based on the results you found. Suppose that you have used a method A, B, C, and you got results. But the result that you got give you a hint that if you have modified the method or the materials you use, you could have get a different result. So you might include it in your future work, that in future we try to investigate this using this kind of method and this kind of method. You have to state it in your discussion. In many work, there is a need for you to discuss previous published literature in support of your research work. In this aspect, try as much as possible to reduce a lot of citation and a lot of discussion of previous works. You can state it that this and this got these similar results using this different method or in other way, but don't give much attention to previous works in the discussion section. The discussion sections are purposely for you to discuss the results you obtain. The final element of research paper is conclusion. So in the conclusion, in most papers, you have an option to state the conclusion as a standalone conclusion. In some journal houses, you can merge them with the results and discussion or with the discussion aspects. And here, you should state your major conclusion. From the results you obtain, before you have done already literature review, you know the state of the art of the current finding in the field before your work. And now you have gotten results and you have analyzed the results and you have given your interpretation and you have discussed. So from this all information on the table, you should come out with a major conclusion based on your findings. And it can be many conclusions that you can do. For example, some have about 3 or 4 different or 5 conclusions, which are into paragraph at the end. So you should know, all is up to you to state the major conclusion that have been found in your work. And that's all for today's discussion on the structure of a scientific paper. Thank you very much for your attention. In case you have any information to give me to help me also improve about what goes in various elements of a research paper, you can comment under this video And if this is the first time you are visiting or watching my video, do well to subscribe. Thank you very much. See you next time. Goodbye.